All right, let's get into it. Finding your path to making comics with me, Gibson Twist. So what is this all about? Everyone who makes comics has to get to know and be comfortable with themselves as artists. What that means is everybody's a little different. And there isn't a package that we can buy that is artist, that we can just kind of be that thing. We're all a little different. Our brains are all different. The kinds of things that we're going to be comfortable with doing are always going to be different. So we have to figure out what those are. That's what we're doing here today, is to give you a little bit of a tool to question. So a big part of that is understanding the process by which you make art. Another big part is being comfortable with your imperfections and trusting yourself to get it right, or at least what is right for you. I'm a big fan of imperfection. Perfection is a goal that can never be reached, so don't try. I like to refer to myself as an imperfectionist, and those imperfections are the things that we call style. It's also been called the mistakes we make on purpose, or the mistakes we make over and over again. So what this all means is different for everybody, like I say. The things that make our path more difficult than just knowing how it's done. Every artistic field is overflowing with people who will tell you how to make comics, but only a few will recognize the way isn't correct, or that their way isn't the correct way, meaning that nobody's process is applicable to everybody. The little things that everybody does are shared around, but nothing is true for everybody. There is no right way to make comics. There is only right for you, and even that can be more than one thing. We are diverse and strange creatures, and the more open we can get to those strangenesses, the better it's going to be for us. Process is more than just the step-by-step of creating. It's understanding how you conceive of your work, why you make the kind of work that you make, and what kind of stories you want to tell. Without understanding these things, you might always feel like you're going in the wrong direction. To put that a different way, you have to know yourself to go yourself. I don't know, I just made that up. This workshop is about helping you figure out how to figure out the right direction. I'm not going to tell you what is your right direction. I couldn't possibly, because I don't know. But I hope to help you build the tools to find the answer for you. We won't talk about pitching or finding agents, but focus on the artistic efforts of making comics. Your process is the start of everything. Nothing after that matters. If you don't know how you're going to make comics, it's how you make comics, not how comics are made. So start with asking yourself some questions, and that is something that I will recommend to everybody. Ask questions. Make lists and lists of questions, or just ask yourself them while you're out for a walk, wherever, and try to find the answer yourself. So the first question is, why do you make comics? Money is a bad answer. Money is a great result of making comics, but it's a terrible reason to make them in the first place, not least because it doesn't pay very well. There's a wide misconception, I think, of graphic novels and kids' graphic novels, especially, that it's this big cash cow. And certainly there are people who make a lot of money doing it, but most of us don't. Most of us are fairly lucky to make enough money to live. You can see I'm drinking water out of an old spaghetti sauce jar because I'm too poor to afford a glass. This is, in fact, a hand-me-down from my second cousin Larry that he's letting me use while he's in prison. So either way, whatever your answer is to why do you make comics, knowing the answer will be a guiding star going ahead. Before you ask what kind of comics you should make, ask yourself what kind of comics you want to make. What's the genre, format, style? What language do you want it to be in? What size do you want it to be? The possibilities for this are fairly lengthy. So these can be sometimes a little difficult. Maybe we don't have a preconceived idea when we start what we want it to be, but at some point we should know. So it's a good thing to ask yourself these questions, not just at the beginning, but over and over again while you're making comics throughout your career. Ask yourself these questions, and make sure you are still on that page, because we grow as people and as artists. Who is the artist or who is the audience that you are reaching with your work, and who is the audience you want to reach with your work? Maybe your work is just going out to a bunch of cis-hetero white guys. And I guess there's nothing wrong with that if that's the audience that you want. But if it's not the audience you want, maybe take a look at, who is the audience you want, and how you might be able to reach them, whether that's different stories, different marketing, et cetera, et cetera. The possibilities are not endless, but there's quite a lot of possibilities. What do you want your comics to say? Do you want them to have a moral? Do you not want them to have a moral? Do you want them to say burn it all down? It's all valid. Whatever you want to say with your comics, know that before you go ahead. What do you want? What do you want your audience to learn? What do you want your stories to learn? What do you want to learn? No question is invalid as far as what you want to make. Knowing the kind of comics that you want to make will help you make comics better every time, if only because you will be happier with them. And are you enjoying yourself? If not, why not? Is it one thing or many that's keeping you from that? Take your time and think about this. Keep it in your mind. Keep this question in your mind. Are you enjoying yourself? And if you aren't, why aren't you? And if you are, what is it about it that you are enjoying? Because that can help you see the path forward as well, to find different things that will make you happier and happier. If there are things that you really enjoy, you can concentrate on those things a little more, and that will reverberate into being happier with other things that you're doing. Identify what you like, identify what you don't, consider how you can change what you don't like, or do more of what you do if possible. Are you overthinking this? From small things like a character name to bedrock foundations of style and material, many artists get lost in trying to make their work something it isn't, to fit the work into preconceptions, or to be overly critical of your own choices. Relax. Nothing you do will ever be perfect, and that is very freeing. Like we were talking about before, mistakes can be a huge part of the character of your work and what defines your style, or at the very least, what encapsulates your style. What would you do if you could do anything? If money, time, and skill weren't an issue, what kind of comics would you make? What would that work mean to you? Make that comic. Identify the skills you need to make it happen and learn them. Having an idea in your mind of the thing you want to have done at the end of it will help you figure it out. It's like building a puzzle with or without knowing what the puzzle is supposed to look like. But you are making the puzzle yourself to be the thing that you want it to be at the end of it. Because at the end of the day, if you are doing something somebody else wants you to do, they'd better be paying you a lot of money to do it. It's not worth it to do it free or cheap if it's not something that you want to be doing. So make comics. If you want to make comics, make comics. I can't stress this enough. It seems obvious, but many people don't follow this step. Not every comic has to be sold and printed. Not every comic has to make money. Not every comic even has to be read. The simple act of making comics, just picking up a pen and a piece of paper or a computer or some pudding and your parents' walls. Go crazy. Just make comics every chance you get, whenever you get the chance. It will help you always, every time. It is virtually impossible to figure out how you're going to make comics without putting pen to paper or other medium and sequencing that art. The more comics you do, the more you'll understand about your process and the better you'll get at making them. Repetition, practice. It's not a waste of time to make comics that will never get published or paid for. That is practice. And there's nothing you will ever do that you won't get better at the more you do it. So make comics before you do anything else. Embrace being bad at making comics when you're new or starting out, or any other time in your career. It's the time to figure out what you do right and what you need to improve. It's much easier to find the improvement areas when you're open to them being there without knocking yourself down because it's not perfect yet. Be cool with making mistakes because you're gonna make them. You might make them a lot, and that's fine. Make the mistakes and then fix the mistakes, or don't. You don't have to. You can just ride along with those mistakes. A lot of people do. A lot of cartoonists just let their mistakes be mistakes, and that's fine. It's all a valid way to make comics. When you find an area that needs improving, see it as an opportunity rather than a failure. In addition, when you recognize things you're proud of, ask what it is about them that you like and whether you can apply those same aspects to weaker areas. Basically, just getting to know your process and what you do and being comfortable with that. So to help illustrate this, the idea that everything ever, there's nothing perfect. Choose a comic or any other piece of art you think is excellent and look for things the artist did wrong or could have done better in your eyes. Remember, the work is still the one that you love despite its flaws. And everything you do that someone loves will have some flaws too. So when you recognize that a piece of great art isn't perfect, that will help you understand that your work doesn't have to be perfect for somebody else to love it, or for it to be good, or even to be great, because every piece of art out there has a mistake. You are not so perfect at this that you're not going to make mistakes, and it's an unreasonable standard to hold yourself to. When it comes to tricks, techniques, and the step-by-step creative works, try everything. If you see another artist talk about their process and some of it sounds fun or interesting, try it. If it doesn't work, move along to the next thing, knowing that the problem isn't you. If it does work, you've unlocked a little bit of your process. Look at you! Question everything, assume nothing. Most of the things we believe are absolute firmaments of sequential art are just what gets passed along as assumptions. There is no rule you must follow, no boundary you can't break, even if there are some you shouldn't. And there's always going to be some that you shouldn't. But if you can imagine it, you can probably do it on the page. Who's going to tell you you can't if you find out you can? Go find out if you can. So we've hit the break time a lot faster than I thought we were going to. I think I might actually open it up for a few questions right now, and I will stop the screen sharing so I can maybe see some people's faces. And if there's any questions right at the top, quick ones, long ones, jump out.
I mean, just looking at the chat, it looks like the overthinking has definitely hit a vein. Everyone kind of, I mean, I think we all kind of tend to overthink and like, oh, is this the right thing? To some degree, but yeah, and then also just not taking action, I think also hit a vein of like thinking about the comic and then just been like, yeah, that's a good idea, and not actually ever executing anything. So.
I guess it's maybe a good idea for me to ask, Where are people in their careers? I'm sure there are people who are just kind of starting out. I know I've seen a few faces in here that have quite a bit of experience and are published and whose work I really like and respect. Um, is there anybody who feels like they are just absolutely lost and no idea where to go? Is there anybody who feels like they've got it all figured out? Nope, nobody's got it all figured out, huh? I especially don't have it all figured out. I struggle with all of this a lot. And I've been doing this for I've been making comics on and off for about 40 years. I've been making them consistently for almost 20, I would say. I guess I didn't give any kind of bio on myself, so I can do that right now. I started making comics at the age of 7 or 8, just drawing little squiggles and putting words next to them and just dumb little stories. And then I got really into GI Joe and I got really into Gremlins, so I started making comics where the GI Joes were Gremlins or Mogwai and they were fighting the Cobra Gremlins, and that was a lot of fun. I wrote stories about my teddy bears fighting evil, although there was never an actual evil. They were just ready for fighting evil. And then I grew up a little bit and I started telling stories a little differently. And then I became, I guess, what you would call an adult. And my stories changed a little bit more, and I drifted away from comics a little bit and focused on prose because I thought, well, I'm a serious writer. I can't be writing comics. I need to write prose. So I wrote prose for a bunch of years and forgot about comics. And I liked it. I loved it. I love writing prose, but I love writing comics a little more. So eventually I gravitated back to it and spent a long time writing this comic and that comic and never really pulling the trigger on any of them until I met my friend and future collaborator, Ben Steves, who really inspired me into getting serious about it. And also my friend Jay Arnold also really, really encouraged me and inspired me to be doing more. And I started doing web comics. And I did one web comic on my own. Actually, I did a few short ones before I got into a big long one called Pictures of You, which I did for about actually it was 13 years to the day, from when I posted the first page online to when I posted the last page online. And it was very well received, and I had a lot of fun, even though it was really bad at the start. I think it got a little better at the end. I also did a web comic with Ben Steves that was just kind of a lackadaisical, laissez-faire kind of we do it when we do it. Neither of us were getting paid enough, especially not him, weren't getting paid enough to really stress about it. So we didn't. We just kind of took it as we took it. And eventually I met my spouse, who found me because of my comic Pictures of You, and she was an excellent artist herself, and I really liked her comics as well. And we started talking about collaborating, and then we, got married just for something to do,
The natural next step.
And we started working on different things together, and just kind of over the course of years went from, well, we really 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 want to make comics, so we'll try anything, to, well, we really really want to make comics, but it's kind of breaking our necks trying to fit everybody else's mold. So we stopped trying to fit anybody else's mold, and we decided these are comics that we want to make. If we're going to spend the time and the not making money to try and make comics, let's make one that we like. Let's stop failing to get something published that we don't. And then we met Jana Marishima, who agreed to take us on as clients. And with her, we started thinking about, different things that we wanted to do. And she told us, things that might sell or things that there was a market for, et cetera, et cetera. And we looked at different ideas that we had to try and see an idea that we could be proud of and happy working with that would also have perhaps some commercial success. So that's where we are now. We recently sold a book and are working on it, an adaptation of Wuthering Heights for Andrews McMeel. And we are also pitching a number of other things, and I'm working with other artists on projects that we think are good projects that we are enjoying. And hopefully somebody out there is going to agree with us. Somebody out there is going to say, we like that idea. We think you're going to be very rich selling this, and we want to cut. And that's where we are now. The things that we work on, unless we're getting paid a lot of money for it, are things that we love. They're things that satisfy us, that we think are worthwhile for us to do, that we're going to be proud at the end of the day that we have done it. So that's basically me. Oh, and my spouse is here today. Say hi, Rory. Rory's not saying hi.
Hi, Rory. I've been promising cats to people. I'm sorry.
That's fine. You can have them all.
Gibson,
I'm
you
done
have
with
a few
cats.
questions. If you want to answer, I thought 2 questions.
Yeah, shoot me questions.
All right. The first one is from Carolyn Dubois. Do you think that self-taught artists can make it in the children's graphic novel field? I don't have an art degree.
I don't have an art degree either. I am also self-taught. I'm a self-taught writer as well. I actually think most people who are working in comics are self-taught. I think it's kind of a waste of time to go to school for making comics, because it really, at the end of the day, doesn't matter if you've got a degree or if you just make good comics. Like definitely seek out some instruction if there are things that you're maybe a little weak on. That's never going to be a bad thing to take a class or get some tutelage from somebody that knows their stuff, which is actually something that we'll talk about in the second half quite a bit. But self-taught artists, absolutely. I think most working artists are self-taught. Is that a good answer? Was I understanding the question correctly? I'm going to assume that I was.
I believe so. I think you answered it well. The next one is from Sarah. Do you know a strategy for staying off the roller coaster of my work is great / my work is trash?
I don't know a way off that roller coaster, but I would suggest don't get off that roller coaster. This is not my idea or philosophy, but it is a part of growing and building and learning as an artist, to see your work as being very good because you have gotten better. And then as you grow as a person, you will see areas in your work that you need to improve or you want to improve, that you're just not happy with. And then you can work on building those. And then you get to a point where you think your work's really good because you have actually improved. And then the cycle kind of goes back and forth like that. So it's helpful to be able to recognize that your work is very good sometimes and that your work needs improvement sometimes. Those two things are necessary for development and for improvement as an artist. Like, we all go through that, and if we don't, we're probably stagnant. So, that's a thing that goes back to embrace your mistakes, but also embrace your skills. uh, never knock yourself for not being good enough, and never think you're king shit for being good at the thing. You can be proud of the things that you're doing while also recognizing areas that you need to work on. Is that good? Any more questions? I feel like I'm answering too many questions before they get asked.
No, you're good. There's one more. I think I just saw Melissa. Would you be able to do a self-critique of one of your panels or pages?
A self-critique of one of my panels or pages? Probably not on this call. But it's something that I do kind of as I go a lot of times. When I finish things and have put them to bed to say, yes, I am finished with this, I don't often go back to examine them then, but I will look over things a lot while I am doing them and try and identify mistakes that I'm making as I'm going. But there is always right at the end, before I say this is done, where I will go through and kind of self-evaluate where I've done things right and where I've done things wrong. So it's a thing that I do as I'm going and just before I wrap it up with a bow. It's a good question. I don't think I have any ready to go, although maybe I'll look at that in the break, and if we have time at the end, I might dig one out. Well, if there's no more questions right now, I guess we can take a little break, maybe a 10-minute break. Everybody can go have a smoke and get some coffee and have a fart. Let's all have a fart, a 10-minute fart. Has anybody thought of any questions in the break? Or anything they want to mention or talk about?
Gibson, how long did it take you to stop freaking out at the beginning?
I'll let you know. I mean, the more I did it, the more comfortable I became with it. So it's kind of just been I guess a gradual process. There was a little bit of a gradual process of getting into being freaked out in the first place, because when I was doing it as a kid, I was just doing it for the love of it. I wasn't thinking about it, any of the things that you freak out about. And then when it started getting to a possibility that I would have people actually reading these things, then I started to overthink it. I started to kind of question myself and question what I was doing, whether I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, whether it was good enough. And it did take a while for me to kind of realize that all of that was just noise, and it didn't really matter, because the point of it was to make my art. The bottom line was to make my art. And if people wanted to read it, people wanted to pay for it, that was cool. But I had to make my art. And that wasn't just one exact particular thing. I didn't have to do, fluffy boy love comics. I didn't have to do, power fantasy superhero comics. I didn't have to do self-indulgent navel-gazing comics, even though I did all of those things. I could do any of them and anything else I wanted, as long as it was a story that I was going to be proud of telling. So I just set about telling the best story I could tell, rather than telling the best story. Does that make sense? Cool. And I'm almost there. Someday I'll do it. Might be today.
I had a
to-
question.
Go
Sorry.
for it.
I had a question, kind of, this is gonna sound a little jumbled, I think, but I'm young, I'm 23. I just moved across the country, graduated from my undergrad. And I'm very aware that comics doesn't make a lot of money, and that's not why you should be in it, right? And so my life crisis, existential, oh, I have to start my life, freak out is kind of like, what do you have any advice on like how to support yourself as an artist, whether it's just, you know, work is, you know, day job until like you find that income, or like kind of navigating that, because comics is very time consuming. And so I'm constantly like juggling, like, okay, well, like, you know, I'll work this part-time job for like this long, and then you're like, yeah, but what if I'm here 20 years from now? Like, is that okay? And things like that. I just want to know if you had any advice on that, or any
Well,
insights.
that is perfectly okay. I'm almost 50, and I just got my first graphic novel contract. I did self-publishing for a long time, web comics and you know, actual printing as well. But it is perfectly okay if you never get any kind of interest from anybody else, as long as you enjoy doing it. You can just do it. There's too much pressure on making money at it. The reason to do it should be because you want to, because you get something personally out of it. That said, I do think the way to support yourself is, at first, when you're learning and figuring out who you are and what you want to do, work that day job. For a lot of reasons, not the least of which is that it's a steady paycheck, but it's also life experience, which is always going to help. Like, you just moved across the country. Awesome. I highly recommend moving like as far away as you can from the life that you've known, because you get to know a different life, and that is going to help you tell stories. And that's what comics is. It's telling stories. However good your art is, or how bad your art is, the important thing is to tell stories. So the more you feed the storytelling part of your brain with knowledge and experience, the better. And work that day job while being open to getting paid for your work. And, you know, put it out there that, yeah, I'm an artist for hire, and you can hire me to draw your art, or here's art that I've drawn that you can simply pay me money for because you like it. And I think we shouldn't be deciding to be professional artists until there is an unreasonable amount of work for us to keep working that day job. Because a lot of us just and younger people, but also older people, say, well, I'm going to be an artist, so I'm quitting my job. Now I need to find some people to pay me because I just quit my job, and I'm, you know, poor, and I'm going to get kicked out of my home, and that's not going to help anybody to make art. And when we have this money pressure of like, I have to make art to make money, I have to sell this or I will die, that makes it a lot harder to make art. So I think you're probably going in a good direction. I don't know your direction, but it never feels like we're being productive when we're just doing stuff for fun or for personal satisfaction. But I truly believe it is at the core of making great art is believing in the thing that you're making and enjoying doing it. I always say that I wouldn't make comics if I didn't feel like I absolutely had to. And I've been making them for almost my entire life, despite brief periods where I will vacillate in and out or do something else for a period of time. Like I'm always making comics. I'm always coming back to comics. And I think that's something that can only be rewarding if it is satisfying a part of you. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
It definitely does. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Part 2, building your creative support system. This is going to be a part where we get into a little bit more of the external influences that we can find that will help us, rather than the external influence that makes us feel like we're not good enough, we're not doing it right. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is a mission statement that I think every artist should have, no matter what they're doing. I think people outside of art should also have a mission statement. I think it just helps. And a mission statement, if anybody's not entirely clear on what it is, in essence, it is your constitution of making comics. Identifying those earlier questions about what kind of audience you want to reach, with what kind of stories or messages, and how you want to be seen as an artist. This can be an evolving document, and probably should, as you discover more about yourself. But it should be the benchmark of finding and maintaining your artistic voice. This is your personal contribution to creative support. This is the thing that you can set up as your goal. The concept of the secret kind of steals from this and makes it a little magical, but it is essentially the same thing. To picture what you want to achieve will help you know how to get there. Like if you are going to go on a trip somewhere, it helps to know where you're going. Otherwise, you're just out on a walk or a drive, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you feel lost, this will help you orient. I find the best mission statements are simple and concise. The more complicated they are, the harder it is to tell broader stories. But for some, it's good to roll out the laundry list. This is especially true when you're starting out. Whatever works for you is what works for you. So basically what that means is the narrower you can focus your focus of what you want to do, the easier it will be to figure it out. But try not to put too many qualifiers on it, because that will limit you. And as an example, this is my mission statement. I've had many over the years. I will probably have more because, like I say, it is an evolving document. And it is for me, not for you, but I'm sharing it so you can see an example. My mission statement is to tell unusual stories for unusual people. Stories with honesty and sincerity, even when they're untrue and sarcastic. And encourage the rebellious nature to question what we're told. I am a rabble rouser. I rouse rabble. I try to question everything that I can, and find the perspective that is mine, to find the things that I feel. And then I can tell those in stories. I can find creative ways to put those into the world. And at the same time, I want to be telling stories to people who aren't necessarily getting stories for them, stories that aren't quite told as much. For me, that means not just a diversity of cast, but a diversity of subject. And oftentimes maybe the dirtier side of stories that polite society would maybe blanch at, but are parts of our lives that we all deal with, or even just some of us deal with, but they are real, tangible, definable things. Just basically I want to tell stories for people who don't get stories told for them, which isn't, telling the Black experience or the queer experience or a woman's experience, but to tell stories that feature those people, feature people who aren't always the star of the show, and just regular stories like going out and having a party with your friends, or trouble with your relationship, or anything like that. So this helps me kind of focus on, yes, this is the kind of story that I want to tell, and this is the kind of story that I want to be known for, but it's not so hemming in that I am telling the same story every time. I hope that makes sense. It is something that works for me. Everybody has a very different set of ideas of the kind of stories they want to tell, and some of us don't really recognize it. We're not conscious of the kind of stories that are going to work for us to tell, and we can and should spend as much time as possible thinking about that and defining that and refining that, so that we get something that is comfortable, that we can look at and think about and say, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's where I want to be. The second thing is finding a mentor. And this is, again, something I cannot overstate. Actually, I probably can, as I've written here, but it's still very important to have someone with experience who's looking out for you and offering advice based on their experiences, and hopefully other people's experience that they've just been exposed to. The longer somebody's been around in the business, if they have any kind of open mind, they've heard experiences from others, and oftentimes those experiences can be common. For me, a lot of that has been because I am a cis hetero white man, more or less. It's been important for me to listen to people who are not cis hetero white men, and to hear the commonality of their experiences informs the things that I do and the choices that I make when I'm depicting these stories. And it helps open up for me the truth of the stories that I want to tell, and the way that they will hit different readers. So we don't have to get burned by fire if someone is telling us it's hot. We can reach out to somebody when we have questions, or just to get general advice, to say, that's maybe not the best for you. It might work for some people. It might not work for you. Maybe this will work for you. So how do you find a mentor? Ask. It's kind of that simple, as long as you can overcome the crippling fear of feeling like you're bothering someone or wasting their time. It's a real hurdle to get over. It's very much easier said than done, of course, to not feel like you were a pest or annoying somebody by asking them if you think that they are, too good for you or beyond you. But it's not true. The most professionals won't mind being asked for advice. That is very true. Most of us like it. A lot of us are more than happy to help artists we think show promise. We want to read good art too. We want to see the industry and the medium and the form and the craft be better. We want to see it elevated. And if we can do something that will help that along, that will help other artists be better artists, to be more comfortable, to do better work, to do more work, to do individualistic work, to bring more voices in. For the most part, we want to see that. And if there are people who don't, if there are people who are annoyed by you asking for advice or help or anything like that, that's not somebody you want anywhere near you. Those are, let's call them a nudge. There are very many epithets that I won't use here for the kind of bad, the bad juju that brings. And I've lost my place. Yeah, don't be nervous. Ask us. The worst thing that we can say is no, and probably most of us, even if we can't take you on as a protege or be your mentor, we will often have advice to give back, like I'm doing now. And there are people who have a lot more experience than I have, and there are people who have a lot less experience than I have, and it's all the same. Most of us are perfectly willing to share what we have. And part of what I do is if I don't have good perspective on it or don't have an answer for you, I'll try and find it for you, or at least try to point you in the direction that you will find it. So look for someone who understands you and what you want to do. It's probably not a good idea to approach a stranger who has no idea who you are, but in the course of, you know, getting to know other artists and other creators, you will come across people and you will get to know people. So look for people with working experience in your field. If you want to make comics, it's probably not a great idea to look at somebody who does prose or film or music, because what they will have to offer you will not be as relevant, and they might not understand the things that you're trying to make, which goes back to, you know, the first point. People who are willing to put up with 1,000 questions. Like I was saying, if you meet somebody who's a little testy at being asked questions, steer clear of them, because they're not going to do you any good at all. They might just make you feel bad about yourself, and you don't need to feel bad about yourself. There's no reason. It doesn't help. Somebody who cares about you and your success. You know, this goes back to the thing about strangers. You don't want strangers, but you also don't want somebody who thinks you're a fool, or, you know, is too wrapped up in themselves. Again, most of us are going to care, especially if we see something in your work that we like or shows promise. We are going to want to nurture that. So if you find somebody who engages you at all about what you're doing, that is a good sign. That is somebody to talk to, and absolutely somebody who is open-minded, because you need them to know that the way that they do it isn't necessarily the way that you should do it. You should be looking for somebody who's going to consider you as much as they can. And now we're on to finding critique partners. And this is a tricky one. I see a lot of people looking for critique. And I see it happening a lot in the wrong places. People often will post material on the internet for everyone to see and invite feedback. And I kind of think that's terrible, because there are too many people out there who are just looking to find things wrong with what you're doing, and not necessarily so concerned about finding what you've done right. You want people who will do both. They will, I think I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit on the slides. So let's read what I've written. When I say good critique, I mean feedback from people you trust, people who are qualified, and people you ask for the feedback, rather than internet randos who are champing at the bit to tell you what you did wrong. How do they know? Just somebody reading the internet might not have any kind of perspective on what you're doing, or their ideas of what make a good story aren't your ideas of what make a good story. And it's hard to take that and apply it to what you do. A lot of times it just has no relevance. The kind of work that I do, if you know, if somebody who did just gag comics about video games, which I'm not, you know, putting down, but that's not what I do. And they might not understand what I do and the kind of stories I want to tell. So their feedback is not necessarily going to be the best feedback for me. Now, that said, it's entirely possible that that somebody who does make those kind of comics that I don't make is going to understand what I try to do. Maybe they are really interested in reading stories that are like what I do. So it's good to know before you start handing your work to somebody to be eviscerated. It's good to know if they're going to be on board with the kind of story that you want to tell. So look for readers who do work or express opinions you value. People who understand, at least sorta, the comics and stories you want to make. People who will tell you where the story isn't working, as well as where it is, because both of those are important, without bombarding you on how to fix it. That's your job as the artist. It's really common in critique to say, well, this part was a little weak, do this to make it better. If you are getting that kind of advice, ignore it as much as possible. It's inevitable that somebody is going to suggest those things, but it should be kept to a minimum. It should be not frequent. They shouldn't be telling you how to fix everything that you've done wrong. That defeats the point, and then it's just, you know, they're a co-author. Find people who will give honest, direct feedback in a supportive manner. No sugarcoating, but no clever insults or hilarious snide comments, which is a big thing of critique on the internet, especially, is people who want to get a jab in to show everybody how clever they are. And I've been as guilty of that as anybody, but never when somebody specifically asks me for a critique. Usually I do it with politics. It's safe to do it with politics. And it's a good idea to apply all of these things to yourself as a critique partner that makes you a better critique partner. And it doesn't have to be two ways. The critique partnership doesn't have to be two ways. It can just be somebody you trust as a reader, or you can just give feedback to somebody else that you don't necessarily want that feedback from them. I'm very picky with whom I show my work in process, for a lot of reasons that I've listed here. There is a lot of value to critique groups, specific critique groups. If you're getting into one that you haven't picked yourself, you'll probably want to find somebody to pick it for you that is taking what you do and the kind of work you do into consideration. Jana Morishima is really good at that for people who aren't members of the Kids Comics Studio. Really the only critique groups that I've been placed into that I've enjoyed have been sorted out by Jana. Otherwise, it's real hard to just pick a group of people. Even if you like what they do, you might not necessarily have insight on each other's work. So pick your critique partners carefully, and definitely keep it to a minimum to throw it out into the world. If you are somebody who can parse good critique versus bad critique, that's more is the better. And that's a good skill to learn. It's a difficult skill to learn, but assessing everything that you get back and asking yourself, is this relevant? Is this helpful? Is a necessary skill, because you're going to get a lot of bad advice. You're going to get a lot of good advice too. So where do you fit? Comics is a big, wide world that encompasses a lot of different formats and industries that often seem like different entities. In some ways they are, with their own conventions, audiences, and expectations, but they're still all comics. you don't have to stick with one, and you might want to try them all. There's graphic novels, kids graphic novels, adult graphic novels, is a its own thing that is separate from the direct market, which is pamphlet comics, stuff that you find at the comic shop, the stuff with the staples in it, the Supermans, the Batmans, the Spiders-Man. Those two are very different markets. They're very different corporate entities across the board. They have very different pay structures and publishing structures. How they assess and accept work is very different, and the audiences are very different. But then again, you have strips and newspaper funnies, which is in itself quite a diverse area. But again, it's a different corporate structure. It's a different audience. It's a different way of making comics. It's a different style altogether. Kind of similar, but different again is political editorials. Those are not as diverse in their style, but there's still a lot of different kinds of them out there, and different artists have different perspectives, and where they appear, what kind of audience they are reaching, and the effect that they have are different again than all of these other things. You have manga, or manga, if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, that is once again a completely different kind of comics industry than North American or European graphic novels or direct market comics. Even though they kind of have the same printing format, it is different, and the styles of different stories that are out there and the genres that are out there and the audiences are again very different. They're, you're reading the same thing, but it's different, and the way that people make them is wide and varied. Zines and mini comics, again, completely different way of making them, completely different way of distributing them, and completely different audiences. For anybody who's not familiar maybe with zines and mini comics, they are generally the stuff that you make on a photocopier and staple together yourself, and you sell at your local shop, or just yourself on the side of the road, or maybe at a flea market or anything like that. But they are generally self-made, self-produced, really cheap to print. And then web comics and digital comics, and there is a difference between web comics and digital comics. Web comics are on a website. They are there to be accessed anywhere. All you need is a web browser, whereas digital comics are files that are specific to, being on a computer, like an ebook or a PDF. You can't just access them anywhere you go, and those are again a completely different model of production, of distribution, of audience. Web comics is not necessarily a style of comic, but a format of printing, but it is wide and diverse and really informs the kind of things that you can do on there. My web comics were generally, a page of what would be a printed comic would be a page on a web comic. There are other people who do it very differently. Some people have done web comics that the art progresses as you click on a single image. Others of them sometimes get into animation, which I think leaves comics a little bit, but that's, nitpicking. And more. There are certainly more that I haven't thought of here. Instructional things like an IKEA how-to booklet to help you build your Flug, or airplane safety instructions. Those are comics. They're a different kind of comics, but they do what they need to do. They're accomplishing a completely different thing. And knowing all of these and what is out there for you to choose from will inform what you choose quite a bit, maybe more than we even realize, because most of my early experience was in making the direct market style of things, where it's an issue of comics that has a set number of pages and a definable size and generally a similarity of subject matter. But I moved, beyond that, and I tried to do strip funnies and things like that, and I had fun doing it. Ultimately, it wasn't what I wanted to be doing, but it was fun. I enjoyed doing it. I've tried a little bit of political editorial cartooning, and I did not care for it. I did not last very long at it. Manga has been a big influence for me. I don't know that I would necessarily say that I've done it, but I've done, similar kinds of things in my own style. Zines and mini comics I did a lot when I was a teenager and a little bit into my 20s. In fact, when Rory and I got married, we made a little mini comic that we gave out at the ceremony because we're weird and that's what we wanted to do. We just wanted to do it. We didn't make any money on it. We will never make any money on it. It's impossible for us to make money on it. We did it because we liked it, but we don't do it anymore. We might do it again. We might not. And of course, webcomics, I have, years and years and years of experience in. I loved it. I will probably do it again. So, you can try everything. Maybe you should try everything. See if you love it. See if you hate it. You might find something that you didn't know was exactly what you should be doing. So be open to trying new things. When we look deeper into these things, we find that even within the different formats, there is a wide variety of styles and stories. These categories aren't cages, and if we can imagine it, we can do any story in any one of them. You aren't bound by them, and choosing one doesn't make for you the choices you need to make. Doing one thing isn't limiting. You can do other things. It might be better to do other things. I have a little bit lost my train of thought, but I'm going to keep going. So comics is a big wide world. There is a place for everyone in. Everyone who wants to make comics can make comics. If you want to do it a little bit just for fun on the back of an envelope while you're talking on the phone, that's acceptable. If you want to devote your entire life to it and forget everything else that you're doing, surrender your social life, surrender family, surrender leisure, and just make comics all the time, which I've also done and have enjoyed. Do it. There's no minimum, there's no maximum, there's no requirements, as long as you are doing something that you enjoy doing and get satisfaction out of doing. Do that and don't apologize. Don't ask for permission, because you're great. There's a place in it for everyone. There's a place in comics for everyone. Just have to find yours. So now we come to the no free lunch part of the ceremony. I am offering a creative comics coaching enrollment. So to describe what that is personal, me and you talking about what you do. We all have a little trouble finding our path sometimes. It's hard to trust ourselves to know which way to go. A little or a lot of personalized coaching can go a long way to getting us where we need to be. So it's a little bit like a mentor, but also a little bit like a critique partner, which will involve you talking to me, the members of the course talking to each other sometimes, but mostly one-on-one, with me asking questions, very pointed, specific, intentional questions that will evolve as we go to try and find and help you find more specifically where you should be putting your efforts, what you should be doing, what's maybe not so great for you, and where you want to end up with it. So we're offering a 6-week guided self-exploration of your own goals and work habits to help you discover your personal creative process. I think that's more or less self-explanatory. I will answer any questions that you have about it. So I repeated that whole thing. I just forgot to take that off. So we're asking $600 for the 6-week course. It is limited to 10 members because my time is not infinite, and I want to be able to focus with everybody who's involved in it, and to get in there and not just kind of like skip off. So we're limiting it to 10 people. We're asking $600 for the 6-week course, which you can pay at one time or in a couple of installments of $300, I think, at the start of each month. I didn't put it down here, but we're going to be starting in, I believe it's July 11th will be the first meeting. And every week will be weekly group sessions designed to expand your perspective, and one weekly one-on-one session with me to narrow your focus. The group sessions will be a little bit of a lesson plan where I talk about specific subjects and how to capitalize on certain things and how to avoid pitfalls, tips to maybe focus on one thing or another. And then in the one-on-one sessions, which will happen at your convenience, we will meet when it is most convenient for you to talk one-on-one, answer questions, give advice, et cetera, et cetera. So the aim is to find clarity of what speaks to you, what motivates you, and what works for you as an artist. So there we go. Any kind of questions, any kind of complaints, I guess, just anything you want to ask or talk about. I open the floor.
I do have a few questions I've collected from the chat. If you want to start there, or do you? Anyone?
Yeah, we can start with some collected. Let's go one back and forth. How's that? If anybody has any questions that they haven't asked in the chat, go ahead and raise your hand, and I guess we'll get you that way. But we can alternate back and forth between one of Jade's written down questions and somebody asking. What do you got, Jade?
Pulling up the sheet. Carolyn asks, I work with traditional art media currently. Do you use any digital media to produce your comics? And what is a good way to start exploring digital tools?
It's a good question. I assume when you say traditional, you mean paper and ink and pencil and stuff like that. That is how I work also. I haven't myself been able to move into digital, although I'm interested in it. I don't generally do line art that way. I do coloring and lettering that way. How to start into it, I think find yourself a program and start using it, and just like I was saying before, embrace that you're going to be bad at it when you first start out, and know that the more you work with it, the more you're going to get to know it. There are different instructional courses all over the internet. Some are for pay and some are for free. I know I think it's just in the regular Kids Comics Unite, the regular membership. Jeff Larkin, who is here today, does a Clip Studio group that I think I've heard good things about. Jeff, are there good things about that?
No, just terrible complaints, but
Yeah, that's what I thought.
People have fun complaining, so it's all good.
So, I mean, like my advice to how to get into almost anything I think is going to be, just do it, just start it. If you know somebody who has thoughts on it, ask their advice. That is, an example of a critique partner, or a little bit of a small scale mentor. If you know somebody who's willing to give you some tips, tap them for it. If not, just get in there, start hacking away, find some online tutorials. YouTube's gonna have 100 videos on how to do everything with every program. So embrace that and just kind of put them on in the background to kind of half watch while you're doing stuff, and just do it. Just get into it. None of it's a waste of time. All right, Christine Mix, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for doing this workshop. This is great. So the question I have is for the creative coaching workshop. You said you're meeting weekly. Is there a certain day, times? How long is each workshop?
Well, the first group meeting is going to be on January 11th. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
It's a
It'll be
Monday.
It'll be July 10th.
July
If
10th?
it shifted it from Tuesday to Monday, right?
Okay, yeah, it is on the Monday.
Okay, so Monday.
And that will be the first meeting. If in that meeting the members decide that a better time can be found, we will find that better time. Those will be recorded and available for viewing later for anybody who can't make them.
Okay.
The one-on-one sessions will be entirely decided between the members and myself. My schedule is very, very open. Probably won't be able to meet super late at night or super early in the morning, but it will be based on their schedule when is good for them to meet.
Okay,
And it's like I say, it's a 6-week course. I think it's supposed to wrap up in the 2nd or 3rd week of August.
Okay, thank you so much. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Good to
great.
know.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
All right, Jade, do we have another question?
Yes. Gwendy asks, who would you say were your biggest influences or inspirations?
My biggest influences or inspirations, right off the top of my head, I'm going to say Jim Henson. I don't think there's any single artist who has influenced my work more than anyone else. He taught me to read. He taught me to share. He taught me to care about other human beings. He taught me to be weird, and taught me that was okay. He also taught me to speak French and Spanish a little bit. Also, Jaime Hernandez, who is one half of the Hernandez brothers who do Love and Rockets, was a big influence on my comicking work. Dan DiCarlo, who is, you might not know his name, but you definitely know his work on Archie. He did the designs for what is generally the definitive Archie design. I take a lot of influence from music as well, not just in like the creation of it, but how it is presented. And I feel that informs the way that I present my comic work a lot. I will tell you also a huge influence in my creative process was Scott McCloud's Making Comics. And if I'm going to recommend one book here, it would be Making Comics. And I didn't bother reading Making Comics for several years after it came out because I knew how to make comics. I've been doing this for a long time. I know how to make comics. That's got nothing to offer me. But it turned out when I did read it, it's not an instructional. It is a philosophical examination of how comics get made and the various different ways that they get made, and who can make them and how we can make them. And a lot of the book really just says, it's up to you to, you know, figure out how you are going to make the kind of comics you want to make. And I realized after reading that, I wasn't making the kind of comics that I wanted to make. I was just making comics to churn them out. And the result of what I was doing was not satisfying to me. And I was having a lot of trouble finding my place in my path because of that. And after I read that, I realized, well, no, I want it to be this. And that'll take a little more time and I'll need to learn more to do it. But that's what I want to be doing. Those are the kind of comics I want to be doing. I want comics to have a feel. I want them to have a resonance with the readers of the place and the stories and the people. And I wasn't doing that. So reading that helped me kind of coalesce a lot of those missing parts of my creative journey. Even though I hate the phrase creative journey, it is, you know, it's there. I mean, there's also, I mean, there's a ton. My spouse Rori is a constant inspiration for me. Different people that I've collaborated with are a continuing inspiration for me. The people I just kind of know in the industry, my colleagues, inspire me a lot, especially when we start talking about comics just philosophically or, you know, academically. I love just talking about comics with anybody who wants to talk about them. All right, who's next? Feed me questions. I guess I should mention how to find the creative comics coaching course. Jade, if I can ask you to post a link to it in the chat if you haven't already. I can't actually see this the chat.
Yeah, it's there.
It will be posted in the comments of the replay for sure, and probably, you know, various postings on the KCU feed. We'll get that link all over the place. If I could put a link like right here, I would, but nobody could click it. Oh. So do we have more questions? Do we have questions about that? Do we have questions about the process, your personal process? Patrick Lugo has raised his hand.
Hi, Gibson.
Patrick, hit me.
It's always a pleasure to hang out. But I was just reading some of the comments, and John St. Amant kind of talked about the perils of hunching over, and that got me thinking about the importance of self-care, right? But not just physical, also like up there. So since we've talked about such things in the past, maybe a little bit, I was wondering if you could be more expansive here and now.
It's a big topic. I am not the best at at practicing self-care, other than I think the biggest thing that I do that is maybe the best help for anybody is to not take it so seriously, and you know, not to not take it seriously, but not to overblow the importance of any particular thing in comics, and don't sweat it when somebody doesn't like what you do, because can't get around that. Nobody is making work that appeals to everybody. Somebody is going to not like your work, and who cares? You know, don't make your work for the people who don't like your work. Make your work for the people who do, and for the people who will. And you'll get better. Trust that. But in the meantime, what you're doing is perfectly fine for where you are right now, and that will always be true. I think the psychology of making art, we are a little bit divided into two different groups of people: the people who genuinely want to get better and to do the best work that they can and to learn how to do that, and people who insist that they have to be perfect already. And that can take the form of people thinking that they're just absolutely great and flawless, or people who are constantly beating themselves up for not being the best. Like I said before, the only thing you can be is your best. You can never be the best. Is there any other specific sub questions based on that? Have a good breakfast, I guess, is important. I usually don't, but you should. Don't get arrested, or do. Maybe getting arrested is part of your process. I don't know. I don't judge.
I have a question.
Okay.
So, what would you recommend for learning how to pace your comics? How would you, pacing on the page? Is there some links you can offer to figure out how to do that?
Links that I can offer? No. What I can suggest is, first of all, doing it over and over again will help.
Yeah.
That's obvious. Something I try to do with my work is to have every page end on some kind of beat.
Yeah.
And once I know, what the beats are, that'll help me, figure out the pacing of that page. Or it also applies to a spread, or to a chapter, or even to a panel. But that again is kind of part of, doing it will get you there. But I think the big thing I would suggest is, when you're looking at other stories, other media, not just comics even, but comics generally, find the ones that are paced in a way that please you. And consider like what it is that goes into that pacing, into those layouts. And if possible, ask the artists themselves, like, what do you do to pace your comics? And don't necessarily ask what you should do, but ask what they do. And ask everybody you ever can ask. If it's something that is a thing that you want to learn, ask around. We all love to talk about ourselves, so we're generally easy to convince to talk about ourselves. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right, I have 6 questions still left. So
6.
do you want me to go? Yeah.
Let's get into them.
All right. Aaron Siska asks, respectfully, I think we need to change the conversation a bit. GNs and comics are in so much demand right now. We, the creators, should not feel bad about being paid for the time and talent that goes into them. How can we change the narrative and make corporate publishing pay fair rates and royalties instead of trying to underpay comics creators?
I'm going to tell you, I think about this a lot. And the very simple answer is, don't accept less than you think you're worth. Don't do work for somebody else for less money than you think you're worth. Every publisher, everyone out there ever is going to try and pay you as little as they possibly can. That will never not be true, because they are trying to make money also. And they should make money. They take a lot of financial risk in a lot of situations, and it's not unreasonable for them to expect to get their due. But you need to do the same. You need to demand, you need to set a line to say, I won't accept less than this. Don't do something for exposure unless it's the best exposure you're going to get. Rori and I recently did a short piece for a comics anthology celebrating Tori Amos's Little Earthquakes album, which we agreed to do even though the pay wasn't the best, because it was huge for us personally. We would get a lot of personal satisfaction out of doing it. But they also paid us all right. Not as great as we deserved, but the personal satisfaction balanced it out. If it were, something like Daft Punk, if we were doing, a story for Daft Punk, which we like, but is not, personally to our, inner teenager, we would have demanded a lot more money for it, or we would have said no. and saying no is powerful. It is better to not do a job and get no pay than to bust your neck and get no pay. More than that, comics could really use a guild. I see a lot of people talking about a union. Unions are not the answer. A guild is the answer. Unions are for employees. We are generally freelancers or contract workers. There is, quite famously, a massive double-pronged strike going on in Hollywood or with, visual entertainment right now with the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild, because they are trying to set a standard by which their members will work or won't work if it's not met. And comics needs something like that, where we can set, as artists, as creators, we can set the terms by which we will work for you. You being, publishers and what have you. Sorry, I'm losing my voice just a little bit. I'm going to take a drink of my poor man's water. But I think the biggest part of it is simply not accepting less than we deserve. Individually, that is a thing that we can do to kind of change the narrative. And also with that, I think is doing work for ourselves and building an audience before we try and get that kind of work, that kind of paid work with publishers, some of whom are going to be predatory. Not all of them, but a lot of them are going to be predatory. Don't accept less, build your audience. The bigger audience you can build, the more in demand you will be, the more you can get away with saying, no, you need to pay me 10% more. You need to pay me 20% more. And so building yourself up, building your audience, building your reach as much as you can. Easier said than done, I know, but it is a road that we all have to walk a little bit. And when we get that bigger kind of cachet, the more we will be able to demand our own ticket. But until then, don't work for pennies. Don't work for peanuts. Every time an artist accepts a low-paying job or a free job just for exposure, that hurts us all. Because if publishers know that they don't have to pay us what they're worth, we can pay somebody else an indentured servant's wage. They're not going to bother. A lot of these publishers also think artists are interchangeable. Don't work for them. Like it kind of goes back to the thing about not working for the paycheck as much as we work for the satisfaction until we get to that point where we can demand the paycheck. Does that answer the question? I know you didn't.
I know. I'm going to give a big thumbs up for that.
If it doesn't answer the question, feel free to get in touch with me afterwards, and I can answer it maybe a little more succinctly.
Right. I'll move to the next one. Janae Wilson asks, when trying to pitch to agents, when do you know when to put the book down and move on to the next and not keep rewriting and rewriting the first one because it's your first baby? I keep going back because I want it to work, but maybe I need to pitch my second manuscript.
I don't have a lot to say about pitching in agents. It's not really an area that I'm expert in, but I will say, having done a few pitches, if you are asking the question whether you should move on, you should move on. I think if you feel like it's something that is not going to deliver what you want it to deliver, move on. If it's not necessarily worth your time to make the comic without that publishing in mind, and I understand that there are a lot of projects that I don't get too far into until they have a publisher on the other end. Yeah, if you're asking the question, you probably already know the answer. So I will reinforce that whatever you think is correct is correct.
Okay. Marie Ventura asks, any advice for winnowing down a mission statement if you write pretty much anything from hard sci-fi stuff with technobabble to fantasy cooking adventures to early reader nature stories?
Well, if you look at what my mission statement was, there's no mention of genre. There's no mention of format or story type or anything like that. So I would say if you are somebody who is interested in a lot of different kinds of stories and having the freedom, don't put that in your mission statement. In fact, your mission statement doesn't even have to be about comics. If you are a diverse storyteller that wants to tell in a number of different media, the mission statement should just be the core of what is important to you, to be a part of those stories, no matter what kind of stories you want to tell. Certainly there is something about your drive to tell these stories that informs the kind of story that you want to tell. Even if your mission statement is just get all the garbage out of my head and onto a page. If that's what you got, that's what you got. But yeah, I tell a lot of different kinds of stories. Recently, I've been telling a lot of different historical stories that was never part of my interest before the last few years. And a lot of that is because my collaborative partner, Rori, is very interested in telling historical stories. And that goes to what her mission statement is, which I don't remember word for word, but it is heavily on telling stories that she would want to have read when she was a child and what she was interested in, which is great. That is a great basis for a mission statement. Whatever you want to get in there, just be honest with yourself. And it's not performative. It should never be performative. If nobody else ever reads your mission statement, that's fine. It's not for anyone else. It's just for you. Whatever works for you works. I know a lot of my answers are coming down to, well, it depends, but that is kind of the nature of what we're talking about, is that our processes are completely dependent on us. All right, do we have another one?
Yes. So Jada Roland asks, is this class designed primarily for people struggling in what or how to create a comic with maybe some sort of story already begun? Or is it for people who are having the ordinary struggle one has while creating a graphic novel already in progress?
Both. I would say the only really stipulation is that you at least understand how comics are made in the most basic of sense, that there is a page with some panels, with some drawings, maybe some color, maybe some words, and that we're not teaching you from the ground up what a comic is. Other than that, I mean, it's all part of finding our process. I am still finding my process, which changes depending on the book that I'm working on and the people that I'm working with. The way that I work with Rori is different than the way that I work with another collaborator, Ben Steves, and the way that I'm going to be working with Jade, who is collaborating with me on a new story is going to be a different process again, because we are combining different things. So it's something that we will keep examining throughout our career. It's not necessarily something that, oh, I figured it out, I got it, don't have to worry about that anymore. But it's getting you to a point where you can figure that out as you go. You don't, we want to get you to a point where you're not constantly asking, am I doing this right? That you can examine it yourself with, you know, the tools that you decide are important for what kind of comics you want to make, which is, you know, a thing that helps the mission statement, or the mission statement will help you define. Having a mentor is also another thing, because that's somebody that you can always bounce ideas off of. Same with critique partners. I know a lot of critique groups don't just critique the work, but the decisions that we make as artists. So whether you're coming to it as somebody who is lost in the headlights of this big world, or somebody who is fairly well practiced but has questions that they're having difficulty answering or overcoming, as long as I feel like I can help guide you to that, that is something that we can work on together. It will be first come, first serve, but I'm asking everybody to kind of give me a little bit of information about who you are and the kind of work that you're making, so I can see if I feel like I can help you, because I don't want to take anybody's money if I'm not sure that I can offer you your money's worth. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, I'm actually going to combine two, one from Janice and Carolyn.
Like Transformers making Devastator.
How much experience do you have regarding traditional publishing of graphic novels? And could you also describe what it's like to self-publish?
So far, all of my graphic novel publishing experience is self-publishing, with the exception of the deal that we just signed at the start of this year. We're about 6 months into, maybe a little less, into the creation of it. And really the only experience that I have so far is in the negotiations and then dealing with the editor as a script writer. And there's a lot of information, probably a little too much to pour into one question or one answer. Self-publishing was a massive learning curve as far as graphic novels went. I published a lot of shorter things over the years. I did a ton of mini comics and zines. I did shorter like pamphlet comic stuff. I contributed to a few anthologies, but none of it was really the scope of self-publishing a graphic novel. I will say that I was able to learn a lot from publishing webcomics, which is a form of publishing, is a form of self-publishing, to do it on your own. My advice is to stay away from the big aggregate webcomics, because that's not self-publishing. You have very little control over that. It's not a good place to learn how to do it. But I think most of my learning about publishing print books came from just the community that I met while I was doing webcomics, because so many of them were doing that also. So there were people that came before me that had experience and could point me in the right direction, because it's very confusing and there's just too much to learn, especially for me to say it here. I could do a 10-week course, or somebody else could do it, a 10-week course just on self-publishing. But it is rewarding. It is frustrating. It is a pain sometimes, but it is rewarding. recommend it. I definitely recommend putting yourself out there directly to audiences before you really focus too much on seeking the paying work. Because like I was saying before, getting the paying work will be a lot easier if you've got an audience behind you. I know that's drifting away a little bit from the self-publishing, but it is also true of self-publishing. If you're self-publishing a book, it's good to have at least a small section of audience waiting for it. I'm sure that doesn't completely answer the question. It is a very big question. And I think it's probably one of those questions that's good to ask. It's good to ask a lot of people, especially people you know have self-published. A lot of us have written about it, about the process of self-publishing. There are even books out there that will help you self-publish. None of which are springing to mind right at the moment, but they're out there. I'm sure somebody will post something in KCU even about, hey, where are your resources for self-publishing? And maybe somebody will even do a workshop on it or a course. But it is I think maybe it's that is a very good question that is too big for me to answer right now.
Yeah, I would just say, that's kind of what the community is there for. Feel free to post any of these kind of questions and we'll get a pool of answers.
Absolutely. Yep.
Speaking of questions, I think we have one last one.
Okay.
Christine Mix. Can you talk about the various ways two illustrators can collaborate on comic/GN projects?
Two illustrators collaborating on one project. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that can get done. It really depends on the story. It depends on the people involved. It depends. I'm a broken record on that, but Rori and I have talked about doing that together, because I am while I am chiefly a writer, I also do art, and I really enjoy the inking process, which most people don't. So we are looking at ways of kind of streamlining the process on some of our projects together, where she does the rough pencil work and I finish it with with ink or with digital ink or anything like that. That's one way. I've seen artists where they will alternate pages or chapters, like one artist draws one artist draws the other. Or even just splits the art duties on a single page. I've seen that. If there is any way that you can think of, but between you and the other artists involved, give it a try. Try it out on a couple of pages or a short story or something like that. Look around, see what other people are doing with it, but most of all, just brainstorm between yourselves. Like every iteration of two artists working on the same story that's ever been done, I'm sure there are more out there that are waiting to be discovered. It's actually a really cool question. I like that a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Thank everybody for your questions. I'm absolutely loving, like I say, I love talking about comics. Anytime I get to talk about comics is a good day. Are there any more questions before we sign off? Oh, Patrick Lugo has raised his hand. He's causing trouble over there.
Trying to be civilized. Yeah, I mean, okay, this is the thing that I hear a lot, right? Is the I'm an aspiring artist, right? As they lead into things, or like I want to break into comics, right? And what I've been kind of experiencing recently is that there is no like real breaking in. Everyone kind of finds their own way, that sort of thing. But there, like you mentioned it in your slide about the difference between the direct market and your 20-page floppy, and then like you know, Simon and Schuster 200-page graphic novel, and then there's all the stuff in between. So I don't know, I just would like to hear you talk a little bit about like that. What is industry? You know, what is comics, the medium? What is comics, the genre? What is comics, the industry? You know, does that sound like a question?
It doesn't sound like, or it does sound like a question. I don't know that it is a question, but it sounds like a question, so I'll try to answer it. Yeah, I'm a line that I am fond of is, don't ask how to break into comics, ask how to break out in comics. Like I think you were alluding to, there's really no such thing as breaking into comics. It's, you know, it's not a gang or a club that you have to get beaten into. It's not a, you know, a building for you to enter. It is a state. You know, people get, like, professionals get asked that question and very glibly respond, make comics. There, you've broken into comics, which is a nonsense thing to say, and is really just, you know, they don't know how to say, I have no idea, because we have no idea, because everybody who finds a career in comics finds it in a different way. I think the best way, well, the best way to find a career in comics is to get lucky. And unfortunately, that is going to be part of everybody's process. Is the one thing we all share, is that we are a little bit lucky. Rori and I were lucky that we met Jana, and that we're lucky that she saw our work when she saw it. We are lucky that she didn't just pass on the first idea because she didn't think that she could sell it. We're lucky that she saw something in us that we could work with. Right place at right time, or how does it go? Be prepared so you can take advantage of the opportunities when they show up. Which is just, you know, do the things to make good comics, figure out how to make good comics, and be prepared to make comics when an opportunity shows up for you to make comics. If you aren't prepared when the opportunity shows up, if an editor sees your work and says, hey, I like your work, what do you got? And you run around like a cartoon bear, not really sure where to hide, that's a problem. You've missed that opportunity. So if you're going to put yourself out there, be at least a little bit prepared to offer something. Have an idea, have more than one idea. Be versatile in what you can offer. Don't overpromise when somebody asks you what you've got. I'm super guilty of that. You know, realize where your limits are as to what you can do, but then do what you can do. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? I feel like I'm not. I feel like I'm rambling.
I feel like you are.
You feel like I'm rambling?
I feel like you're making sense while you ramble.
I love you, Patrick. So yeah, it's there isn't a way to break into comics. There isn't a path. It's a massive red herring that we all get caught into because people talk about the way that they broke into comics, and then turn around and tell you that all you have to do to break into comics is make comics. But here's how I broke into comics, and it's different for everybody. But everybody talks about, not everybody, a lot of people talk about their process to making comics, to getting comics published, to finding an audience, to making money. We tend to look at it as, well, that's how I did it, so that's how it's done. If I did it that way, anybody can do it that way. And that's just not true. A lot of people get into comics in a way that nobody else could get into comics. We can't all meet an editor at a convention. We can't all win a contest. You know, we can't all get our portfolio in front of an acquisitions editor. We can all try, but we can't all do it. It's just not possible. And there are just so many different ways to get your work noticed. I mean, the comic Check Please, and Lore Olympus, both of those gained huge successes as a webcomic, just because people saw it. They just found it on the internet, and they gained huge audiences. And that is not a super rare thing, but it is definitely not common. It's not something you can set out to do. Can't do it on purpose. But it's, you know, a way that people break into comics. Tons of different scenarios lead to finding an audience, to finding a contract. You can get a comics contract without ever having shown anybody else anything you've ever done. That's a way to do it. You can get that contract by showing everybody your work and just hoping that you build that audience big enough to you know, carry that heavy stick. It's just, there's just too many ways. Basically, we all just have to look at what we can do and just do that until we can find something else to do. It's hard not to sweat that. It's hard to take that in stride. It's so much easier for me to say it, and it's pretty easy to say. But I mean, you can say it too. It's easy for you to say, and if you say it enough times, you might start believing it. Believe your own nonsense. How's that? We'll take that away from the day. Any more questions? I'm seeing. Oh, is it somebody have a question? Is it Jeff? Jeff, do you have a question? Jeff?
Gibson, a
Jeff, do you have a
question
question?
that you often ask people on these things. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I was a little under the weather yesterday. I was a little nervous before the thing started because I was having a lot of technical issues. And I hope I was able to help at least a little bit, because it's so confusing being out here, and we're all basically on our own, even if we can, you know, cuddle together a little bit around the fire for warmth, and go hunting the great beast together. We all have to make our own choices, and it can be scary, and we don't always trust ourselves, and we recriminate over mistakes so easily and so often, and we shouldn't, because those mistakes are ours. We own them, and we can acknowledge them, and we can absorb them and process them as mistakes. We can own up to things that we do wrong without affecting our brains as being like, well, I'm useless. I did that thing wrong. I can't do anything right. Because that's not true either. That's a mistake. So I think if we can just focus on the idea that we are steering this ship. We are the ship, and we are steering it ourselves. Sometimes we need a map. Sometimes we need a star in the north. Sometimes we need somebody telling us to, no, go that way instead. Steer a little bit that way. And it's intimidating because there's no map. There's no one map for everybody. We have to find our own map. So I want to help people find their map, because I want us all to be doing better. I want us all to be making work that we love, even if nobody else does. But I want everybody else to love it too, because I want to read better comics. There's a lot of bad comics out there. And I think it's because so many people are aiming towards something that isn't right for them. So I guess with that, I will wrap it up. Jade, do you have anything you want to add at the end of it?
No, just thank you for the inspiring talk, and I feel like drawing.
Excellent. Everybody get to work. Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
coming out. I did have a really good time talking my talk. Hopefully I didn't talk too much or too fast or too slow.
Awesome.
And I hope to see anybody who wants to talk a little more or to get a little personal guidance in
Taylor has a
the
question.
coaching course.
I just want to ask, do you have like an Instagram or?
Nope. Well, I do, but I don't post there. I have a
Okay.
Twitter where I basically just, make snide comments.
Okay.
It's at Gibson Twist, if you're interested in that.
Okay.
My Instagram is dead. I don't really have any other social media. You can find my website at giantkittenhead.com. And
Will do.
that's Rori and I's joint website. That's mostly hers, but I'm on there too.
Yeah, did you
I
have
actually-
a using process blog that anyone could look at?
Oh, yes. Good point. We have a process blog that you can find on our Giant Kitten Head site. And that is the process blog for our creation of the Wuthering Heights graphic novel. Thank you, Sarah.
I just did a search on you, and I mean I didn't get far.
Well,
'cause
that's
we're
not good.
talking, so I'm listening. Well, no, I'm just saying like I didn't get far. There were a lot of things listed there, and I only went to one. Like because I'm here, but I saw you had something on Facebook from a particular.
Oh, the Pictures View Facebook
Comic.
page has been dead for years. I haven't
Yeah,
posted there at
so-
all in 8 years,
Was
maybe.
that- I know it's late to ask that, but was it totally an unsuccessful attempt to use Facebook, or was it?
Oh, I just hate Facebook. I actually got a
Okay.
lot of engagement on it, but I hate Facebook as they're corrupt and evil, and I didn't want anything to do with
Yeah.
them.
Okay. Thanks.
Oh yes, our process blog is called Folia Do It. And Rory has put up a link in the chat for anybody who wants it. And I am on KCU. You can message me anytime if you have a question or anything like that. I'm around in a lot of the studio events. Sometimes I even host them. Jade does the comics hangouts sometimes that I am usually at unless I can't make it. But even if I can't make it, they're a good time. So yeah, find me wherever I am. I am mercurial and mysterious, but I promise not to kill you. So thank you everybody for coming out. And I hope the rest of your day goes great and hope tomorrow gets better.